Why does losing $50 hurt more than winning $100 feels good? It's because your brain is a terrible accountant. It was built for survival, not wealth, and it's full of glitches that are quietly draining your bank account every single day. Today, we are exposing these hidden mental taxes. I'll show you how to reboot your money OS so you can stop being a victim of your biology and start making moves that actually make sense. Broken calculator. Why your brain is naturally terrible with numbers. Your brain isn't a precise calculator. It's wired for quick survival, not perfect arithmetic. That is the broken calculator in action. It uses mental shortcuts called heuristics that keep you alive in daily life, but can misfire with money. This matters. Loss aversion means losses sting more than gains of the same size, so people overreact to costs and underreact to opportunities. The effect shows up in spending and saving, often in small, everyday choices. The anchoring hook is a trick your brain uses when you see a price first and then judge everything by that anchor. A high initial price makes a discount feel like a steal. Even when the final price is higher than you planned, the mind clings to the anchor and underestimates the true cost. That is how prices fool the broken calculator. A phone listed at $899, then shown as $699 with save $200, can feel like a win even if $699 is still more than you plan to spend. The anchor persists. Mental buckets split money into labeled piles like needs, fun, and emergency, a neat control system that also creates blind spots. Buckets help discipline, but they can delay important actions. If the emergency bucket is tiny, a true crisis triggers debt. The broken calculator misreads interest. Sunk costs make you stay with things you dislike, because backing out would feel like a loss of the money already spent. Present bias blurs the future into the now. If your brain expects quick rewards, you skip saving or chase immediate pleasures rather than long-term goals. These biases are survival tools pressed into service by money, and in modern wallets they misfire. They shape both how you earn and how you spend. To guard against the broken calculator, set up simple rules that automate good behavior, like automatic transfers to savings. Automate first. Another fix is to reset anchors by comparing prices to a neutral reference, not a tempting initial tag. Use round numbers to see real costs. Use the mental buckets idea with clear limits, a big emergency bucket, a fixed mortgage bucket, and separate goals, so you don't derail one bucket chasing another. Make decisions with one pot in mind. Finally, practice paying yourself first and track progress in plain language, not abstract percentages. Your brain can learn to trust a routine rather than chase sudden wins. The fear of losing. Why being safe is actually making you lose money. Loss aversion is a real force. It makes the sting of a loss feel sharper than the pleasure of an equivalent win. The brain uses this as a survival tool, an artifact from chase or flight days. In money terms, that bias shows up as the fear of losing principle, more than the lure of growing wealth. The fear of losing pushes many towards safe choices that look prudent in the moment but quietly drain future wealth. This is not laziness or stupidity. It is a natural signal that evolved to steer us away from danger. In today's markets, that signal often misreads risk and drags us into the wrong kind of safety. This tendency is the heart of the loss trap. People slide into cash and ultra-conservative bets, convinced they are protecting themselves from harm. The problem is compounding. When you keep money idle or in puny yield accounts, your wealth loses time to grow. Small, constant savings in the right place beat big. Dramatic wins missed because the fear of a drop is larger than the appeal of a future gain. The loss trap makes you treat the short-term wobble as if it were a permanent drop, even when history shows markets recover and continue to rise over long horizons. The result is funds that never fully participate in growth, and that absence compounds. The anchoring hook shows up when you lock your mind onto one baseline. You may fix on a recent market hiccup or on the safest looking option and treat it as the true starting point for all decisions. That anchor then biases every choice you make, from how much you're willing to invest to how you judge risk. A common trap is anchoring to a single safe product and ignoring better diversified options that carry manageable risk. You end up with a portfolio that mirrors your fear rather than your opportunities. Anchors stay strong even when new data arrives, because the brain uses them to avoid recalculating. The job is to re-anchor to long-term realities, not to yesterday's unease. Mental buckets is the way we split money into compartments and pretend the buckets don't talk to each other. You might have an emergency fund in one bucket, a safe savings bucket in another, and an investments bucket that feels risky. The bias here is that you treat each bucket as isolated, which blocks a unified plan. In practice, the safety bucket earns little, while the growth bucket lags because you pour too little into it and let fear keep it small. A simple fix is to define a real, shared plan for all money, with automatic transfers that balance risk across buckets. The goal is to respect the brain's instinct to protect while nudging it toward an allocation that compounds. Biases also show up as the endowment effect and sunk cost reasoning. If you already own a losing investment, you demand more to give it up than you would pay to start fresh. You mistake a prior purchase for current value and cling to the position to avoid admitting a mistake. That's the sunk cost trap in disguise. The brain loves continuity, but continuity can destroy opportunity. A practical approach is to set predefined exit rules and to treat losses as data, not failures. If a plan says, if this asset falls below 10% for Y months, reevaluate, then losses become signals, not verdicts. To change the story, lean on concrete steps that respect the fear while guiding action. Use automatic investing so you don't have to face day-to-day fear and decision fatigue. Build a diversified mix that fits your time horizon, not just your nerves. Create a real budget that combines security and growth in the same frame, not in separate, rival worlds. Reframe losses as opportunity costs, what you miss by staying safe. Set explicit risk limits and stick to them, even when the market tests you. Try re-anchoring to plausible, evidence-based return expectations rather than the last scary moment you witnessed. And give every dollar a job in a single plan, so the mental buckets are not fighting each other. These patterns are not character flaws. They are brain shortcuts that protected you once. In money, they can quietly steer you towards safety that costs more than it protects. The fear of losing can be a map if you understand how it biases you. The key is to respect the instinct and channel it into smarter decisions. When you see the lost trap, hear the anchoring hook, and organize with mental buckets, you tilt the odds toward growth without denying caution. That balance is where wealth starts to move, not just survive. The first price trap. Why you overpay because of the first number you saw. The first price you see acts as a mental compass, guiding what you think is fair. In human minds, that number becomes an anchor, a quick reference that shapes later judgments. This is the anchoring hook, a basic brain trick that helped our ancestors survive scarcity, not bargain like a pro. Today it can push you to overpay because your brain stacks every price against that first number, not against true value. You also use mental buckets, quick categories for cheap, fair, and splurge. The first price often lands items in the wrong bucket and keeps you paying more than you intended. Take a common scene. A gadget page shows a phone at $999. Then the sale banner reads $799. People feel a big gain because they compare to the $999 anchor, not to how much the phone is worth in real life. That feeling is the loss trap in action. A fear of missing out on a great deal makes you cling to the discount. The discount dilemma is subtle. You think you are saving, but you are still paying more than you would if you started from a neutral baseline. Even if $799 is lower than $999, if you shopped around you might find it for less. The anchor can distort your sense of value. The mental buckets help you decide fast, but they can trap you in a pattern where you overpay in services as well as goods. For example, a subscription with a listed price of $29 a month feels expensive at first, but a $19 offer sounds like a deal because your bucket says affordable. If you never compare to unanchored benchmarks, you stay inside your comfort bucket and keep paying higher prices. Another example is groceries. A can of soup marked was $2.50, now $1.99 nudges you to stock up, even if you only need one. You end up with more than you planned, and the extra cost adds up. So how can you beat the first price trap? Pause, re-anchor yourself to actual value by checking multiple sources. Keep mental buckets that are independent of the first number. Compare price histories, not just sale banners. Set a hard limit on what you are willing to pay for an item and walk away if it hits that mark. Use a waiting rule. If you can live without it, wait a day to see if the price settles within your expected range. Recognize the loss trap and reframe discounts as information, not as wins. With practice, your brain keeps its survival tools, but you control when to use them, not the other way around. Salary versus bonus. Why you spend free money faster than hard-earned cash. Salary arrives in a predictable stream you can count on each month. Bonuses arrive irregularly and feel like windfall money. This framing taps into survival tools our brains once used to cope with scarce times. The anchoring hook shows up when a big number lands and sets expectations for what counts as normal spending. Mental buckets are tiny ideas in your head that sort money into needs, wants, and future plans. Bonus money often feels like free money, a kind of pocket money your future self didn't earn in the same grind. The brain treats that windfall as lighter on obligation and heavier on opportunity. The result is a shift in how you allocate it. Some of it goes to immediate pleasure, not because you lack discipline, but because the mental bucket labeled fun gets a splash of extra funds. You may notice purchases you'd pause on with salary suddenly feel irresistible with a bonus in hand. The effect isn't a moral flaw, it's a pattern your nervous system learned to survive, now nudging you to spend when it should be saving. The loss trap plays a quiet role here. When a bonus arrives, the instinct to seize the moment can feel stronger than the urge to protect future goals. You fear missing out on a chance to enjoy the money before it vanishes or before work glass ceilings push you to treat yourself. Meanwhile, the anchoring hook anchors your expectations to the most recent big win. If the last bonus bought a big ticket, future bonuses are measured against that same high, even if your current situation doesn't justify it. Your mental buckets flex and sometimes relabel future money as now money, widening the gap between what you intend to save and what you actually spend. Understanding these shifts helps you steer earning and spending instead of being steered by them. Start by acknowledging that bonuses are not extra income in the same emotional frame as salary. Create mental buckets that separate needs, savings, and a dedicated bonus play bucket that you only touch after a deliberate plan. Use a cooling-off period before any large purchase funded by a bonus, and automate a portion of every windfall into savings or debt payoff. Reframe the bonus as a quarterly event, not a yearly jackpot, so the anchoring hook loses its grip. Finally, set pre-commitments, automatic transfers, consequence-based rules, and clear spending limits for windfalls. These steps don't fight human nature, they align it with long-term goals, turning the loss trap, the anchoring hook, and mental buckets from hidden controllers into useful guides. My stuff is gold. Why we overvalue what we own and miss better deals. The endowment effect makes people attach more value to things they already own. When you own something, the item tends to look more valuable in your eyes. You want more to part with it than you would pay to acquire it in the first place. This isn't laziness or greed, just a brain trick that once helped people survive scarce times. The loss trap describes how fear of losing a possession can lock you in, making you cling to stuff that has little use. The anchoring hook drags your mind to an initial price and keeps you stuck there, even when better deals appear. Mental buckets split your money into separate jars in your head, so a sale price can look fair in one bucket and foolish in another. Altogether, these biases push spending and trim opportunities at the same time. At home, value shifts the moment ownership happens. You tend to demand a higher selling price than you'd pay to buy it again. A gadget that sits in a drawer stays tied to its past tag, even as market prices fall. You tell yourself that a jacket or a lamp still holds real worth because you own it, so you keep it around instead of letting someone else enjoy it or it donates real cash. The loss trap whispers that selling now is a loss, so you wait, hoping the price will come back up. The anchoring hook keeps you fixed on that first tag, and you miss chances to upgrade or move items at a fair value. Mental buckets also come into play, framing the decision in compartments. One bucket says hold, another says cash out, and the conflict slows action. This cycle hurts earning and spending by tying up money in stuff rather than letting it work. Liquidity dries up when items sit unsold or are kept longer than they should be. You may miss better deals because you cling to your own past purchase price instead of the current market. The bias also encourages unnecessary upgrades, since new gear feels like an inevitable improvement when your mind is anchored to old ownership. Clutter isn't just a mess of belongings, it's a mental tax, stealing time, attention, and the energy you could use for smarter financial moves. You end up valuing comfort in the short term over long-term wealth growth. A few practical moves can loosen the grip. Seek external valuations and compare current prices before you act, so the numbers you trust aren't just the ones already inside your head. Set a sale threshold in advance and stick to it, even if the item gains a sudden warmth in your heart. Implement a one-in one-out habit to prevent new clutter from piling up. Use a forced sale date, a timer that nudges you to decide. Name and mind your mental buckets on purpose. Fund your savings separately, then price or auction items in the ownership bucket with clear loss thresholds. Challenge the anchoring hook by listing items at a fair price based on market data, not your memory of the past price. By recognizing these biases as survival tools misapplied to modern markets, you can turn them from traps into brakes on wasteful spending and unlock cash for better opportunities. The herd mistake. Why doing what everyone else does is a shortcut to being broke. Humans instinctively use others as a compass for money choices. We rely on social cues to judge what is normal. In crowded markets, when many people rush to buy, the brain sees a signal of safety and lowers its guard. The herd mistake is when doing what everyone else does becomes a shortcut to being broke. The brain uses a survival tool here, but in money it can misfire. The anchoring hook pulls us toward the price and the trend we see in peers. Mental buckets remind us of how we organize money, yet crowds can spill over from one bucket to another. The loss trap feeds this dynamic. Fear of missing out on belonging or catching a popular trend can push you from careful planning into haste. You watch a group upgrade a gadget, sign a fancy lease, or take on a bigger loan, and the urge to join feels like a safety net. The payoff seems fast and loud, even if the long-term cost stays quiet. You might rationalize with ideas like everyone does it, or this is how it's done, and the reasoning sounds reasonable in the moment. The result? Debt stacks up, savings shrink, and the chosen path locks you into a pattern that is hard to escape. The anchoring hook works alongside the herd mistake, nudging your decisions toward peers' benchmarks rather than your own goals. A single example in your feed or a neighbor's purchase sets a mental price floor. You start measuring your life against that standard, not your actual finances. The mental buckets model helps in theory, but crowds blur those boundaries. One bucket fills with status spending while the other, often the future and the safety bucket, gets crowded out. Small, repetitive choices ripple outward, shaping a lifetime of spending and earning that mirrors the crowd more than personal aims. Practical moves help but don't erase the pull of social proof. Pause before big buys and name the motive aloud. Am I chasing belonging or solving a real need? Create a simple budget with explicit buckets for essentials, savings, and discretionary items, and keep peers' choices out of the decision rules. Before a purchase, ask for a cooling-off period and compare options against your own goals, not against the neighbor's latest score. Track where your money actually goes, not where you wish it went, and reframe what normal means in your own life. The herd mistake isn't a moral failure. It's a pattern of brain tools running in the wrong context. Recognize the signals, reframe your anchors, and let your personal buckets guide you toward financial choices that fit you, not the crowd. Chasing bad bets. Why we keep spending money on things that already failed. The brain often sticks with a bad bet because of sunk costs. Sunk cost is the simple idea that money already spent should influence future choices. The loss trap describes how losses loom larger than gains, nudging you to throw more money at something that has already failed. Brain biases that once helped us survive now push us toward paying for things that didn't work. Anchoring hook appears when the first price or first outcome sticks in your mind like a stubborn anchor. Every new deal circles back to that mark. You keep paying for gadgets, memberships, or upgrades because the initial deal felt great, even as value fades. Mental buckets shape the way you move money around in your head. One bucket holds comfort purchases, another holds future plans, a third holds the sting of past waste. When a bad bet drains a bucket, you borrow from others to cover the loss, keeping the bad bet alive. Consider a kitchen gadget that promises time saved. It arrives with excitement, then it mostly sits in the cupboard. Yet you keep buying accessories to get more out of it. You justify each new purchase by thinking the total will add up, or by imagining the days when you'll finally use it. Another pattern involves services and software. You sign up for a plan, use little, but you keep paying because canceling feels like admitting you wasted money. You tell yourself you'll get value back if you just stick with it a little longer, and the clock keeps ticking. A small investment in a failure can grow into a habit of overspending, a loop funded by the loss trap and anchored by the first price you saw. Breaking the pull takes simple rules. Create a clear go, no-go test before you buy more. Pause for a decision period, and set a limit to how much you'll invest after the first setback. Reassign money with intention between mental buckets, so a failed bet can't siphon funds from essentials. Reframe the anchor. Reset expectations by comparing against a realistic baseline, not the initial hype. Track your spend in plain language and review it monthly. When you notice the pattern, you can slow the chase and choose a smaller, wiser move instead. The last chance lie. How stores use your fear of missing out to take your cash. Scarcity signals are everywhere in stores and online, and they steer how people judge value and choose what to buy. The last chance tactic leans on fear of missing out to push purchases, turning a momentary feeling into a quick click. Brain biases are survival tools, evolved for danger and scarcity, but they often misfire in a modern shop. When a banner shouts "last chance," attention narrows and urgency climbs, even for items that might not be truly special. One big driver is the loss trap. Losing out feels worse than saving money feels good, so the thought of missing a deal makes people hurry. The last chance lie uses that to earn trust and money. A countdown timer on a product page can cue a snap decision, because the brain treats the ticking clock as a sign that a door is closing. Seeing a sale labeled as ending soon shakes the calm weighing of options and tips the balance toward buying now. The anchoring hook plays with the first price the brain sees. A high reference price sits at the top, followed by a discount claim, and the mind clamps onto the comparison. Even if the value isn't strong, the brain reads the discount as a meaningful win. A shopper may feel clever saving money, yet the anchor has already nudged judgment toward urgency. This is how a deal can feel like a bargain even when the item isn't truly necessary or well priced for the moment. Mental buckets helps explain why this works. Spending is held in separate mental compartments: needs, wants, and a growing last chance bucket that invites impulse buys. The moment a store signals scarcity, the last chance bucket fills and crowds out the longer-term goals in other buckets, like saving for a rainy day or paying off debt. A simple online trip becomes a cascade. Glance at a product, hear the countdown, and suddenly the urge to buy sweeps across the page, even if the item sits outside the usual budget. To rebel against this design, keep a few simple rules in mind. Pause before clicking and count to 10, then ask if the item solves a real problem or just scratches an itch. Pre-commit to a rule such as waiting 24 hours for non-essential purchases, or comparing the item to a fixed list of needs rather than the latest banner. Check if the price truly rose recently or if the savings are just a rebranded discount. If you remove the triggers, close the tabs, disable countdowns, and skip the autoplay ads, the last chance lie loses some of its pull. The brain's survival tools are still there, but they can be trained to respond to thoughtful choice rather than manufactured urgency. The brain reboot. 3 simple ways to start thinking like a millionaire. Brains rely on fast mental shortcuts called cognitive biases. These are survival tools that helped our ancestors react quickly when danger appeared. In money life, they show up as blind spots that push you toward or away from wealth without you noticing. The 3 simple moves here map those biases to practical actions. With plain language and real-world examples you can try this week. First move, the loss trap. Loss aversion means losses feel more painful than gains feel good, so the brain clings to a bad investment just to avoid the sting of a loss. You might hold on to a stock that's fallen, hoping it'll rebound, even when the math says the odds aren't in your favor. You stall on selling a property that costs more to keep up, just to avoid admitting a mistake. The reboot is to set a clear pre-commitment rule before trouble starts. For instance, decide in advance. If an investment drops by a certain amount, you sell or trim. If a project underperforms for a defined period, you reevaluate. Use a checklist that triggers action, not emotion. This shifts the focus from avoiding a bad feeling to protecting long-term growth. Second move, the anchoring hook. Anchoring bias grabs your mind to a number you first saw, and subsequent judgments cling to it like a stubborn magnet. A salary offer, a house price, a past investment cost. These anchors skew what you think is reasonable now. You might price a car at a level because of what you paid years ago, even if your budget today can't support it. You might negotiate from a fixed starting point instead of from your actual needs. The reboot is to reset your internal anchors with fresh, objective references. Set your own baseline based on current budgets and goals, not old price tags. Before you evaluate offers or assets, write down a clear target outcome, net worth level, monthly cash flow, debt-free date, and compare every new option to that target, not to the last deal you heard about. This creates a moving center that's driven by your plan, not by a stubborn first number. Third move, mental buckets. Mental buckets separate money into chunks so you don't let one impulse drain another. The brain tends to mix needs, wants, and savings, creating spillover where desire nudges savings aside or vice versa. A bucket system keeps money in its lane. One space for essentials, one for savings or investing, one for debt payoff, one for personal or fun spending. The magic is automatic transfers and separate accounts or apps so nothing can cross from needs to fun without a deliberate step. This reduces temptation and builds discipline without feeling like a punishment. Start small. Choose 2 or 3 buckets, automate regular transfers, and review monthly to adjust. You'll notice you can grow wealth while still enjoying life because each bucket has its own rhythm. Together, these moves reveal how hidden biases steer earning and spending. The loss trap reminds you that fear of loss can freeze progress, so you create clear rules to act instead of overthinking. The anchoring hook shows how first numbers shape later choices, so you replace old anchors with current, plan-based references. The mental buckets give money its own lanes, preventing spillover and preserving room for growth. The brain's biases aren't villains. They're survival tools that simply miss the right context. By mapping them to concrete habits, you start thinking like a millionaire in practical, doable steps. In plain terms, your brain's money tricks are survival tools that worked long ago, but in today's world they bias how you earn and spend. The loss trap shows up when fear of losing money boxes you in, making you miss chances to grow wealth. The anchoring hook anchors your judgment to an initial price, so everything else feels off, expensive or cheap, by comparison. Mental buckets help you aim money at goals, but when buckets aren't aligned with real life, money leaks away or gets stuck where it doesn't belong. Direct summary: biases come from our history as survival beings. They steer earning and spending even when they shouldn't. The main players you'll want to watch are the loss trap, the anchoring hook, and your mental buckets. Recognize them, name them, and you gain a little separation from their pull. If you've stuck with me, you're not alone. Lots of people feel their money tug by unseen forces, and that's exactly why these ideas matter. You're beginning to see the patterns, which is the first step to changing how you handle money. If this resonated, a like or subscribe helps so more people spot these biases too. Share in the comments a bias you felt lately, and tell me one money habit you'd like to tweak. Tomorrow we'll dive into practical steps to rewire these biases, simple 5-minute checks, how to set anchors you control, and ways to keep your mental buckets balanced with real life. See you in the next video, where we turn understanding into action.